So now, my heroes, it's getting really, really fun and really, really exciting. At least for me, it is. I hope it is for you too. Um, this is a really big deal, guys. Again, this is where the edge is, and we just showed you some pretty mind-blowing stuff, and we're gonna make it even more mind-blowing, which is really, really cool. Again, I told you when we started talking about volatility, taking that red pill would take you down a rabbit hole that you did not know exists, and it would change you for life. We're going to take that even a step further now. So a lot of people ask, once they see the last video where we talk about placing a trade, where the only purpose of that trade is just to bet that the expected move is greater than the actual move, right? We placed that trade and we showed it was actually very profitable for us. And a lot of people are saying, well, within that, maybe there are times when it's more advantageous to do this trade because it's not always the same amount of overstated. Sometimes the expected move maybe is extra overstated to the actual move. Sometimes it's less overstated to the actual move, etc., etc. So, what do we do about that? So let's jump in that. Again, I just want to review real quick what we talked about, right? If options are overpriced, then there's got to be a way for us to do it. Remember, I'm going to say this over and over and over again because it's so critical. But again, guys, what we see here in this black line is the expected move. Options are priced off of their expected move. The closing price for options, or their settlement price, is represented by this orange line here, which is called the actual move or realized volatility. So as I see this, about 80% of the time, the black line is greater than the orange line. So about 80% of the time, then options are slightly overstated. Not like hugely overstated, but they're slightly overstated. So what we did was we sold a 16 delta put and a 16 delta call every single day for, I don't know, 27 plus years. That's 6,500 plus occurrences in SPY. And all that trade is, it's called a strangle, and don't worry about that now, but all that trade is just placing a bet that the expected move is going to be larger than the actual move, right? And the results were pretty clear. The results were pretty clear. Again, conventional wisdom will say, well, if you have a 100% chance of making money doing nothing, if you sell a 16 delta call, you have an 84% chance of making money. Then if you sell on the other side a 16 delta put, in the middle you have a 68 or 68.2% chance of making money, right? And again, normal distribution curve says in a random setting, prices will fall within their expectation or one standard deviation 68.2% of the time. Normal conventional wisdom also says in Wall Street that it's a zero sum game. One guy's a winner, one guy's a loser, or one girl's a winner, one girl's a loser, and so on, right? However, placing that trade every single day made us profitable not 68.2% of the time, but 61% of the time. And instead of making no money, we made about $41 per trade. So that's a really, really big deal, guys. That shows that options have been overstated for at least the last 27 years. But then a lot of people go, Steven, like, do they ever get really out of whack? Like, I get that consistently, like 80% of the time, they're a little bit overstated, but do they get like really overstated? Are there times when, hey, to pump the brakes, and are there times like, hey, let's really go with this? Let's really, really go with this. And remember, I kind of mentioned this before, so it's very, very important to talk about again. I think a couple of videos back I mentioned this, but the truth is that volatility, which again is nothing more than the expected move, is the only mean reverting asset. Stock prices don't ever revert to the mean. I mean, occasionally they do, but for the most part, stocks are not mean reverting. However, volatility or the expected move is mean reverting. And I also mentioned, which is really, really cool, that when volatility slash the expected move is below average, it takes 4 times as long to come up to the average when you compare it to when volatility or the expected move is greater than average coming back down to reality. Now, here's a little chart that I did earlier on in the year, the last year in the VIX, that I think is a great representation of this. So this blue line in the middle is the average. So from, let's say, the end of March 2016 to the beginning of March in 2017, the average VIX was about 16.2. So real quick, let me see if you guys are paying attention. If the average VIX was 16.2, what was the average expected move in the S&P 500 for that year? Right, it was 16.2%. Perfect. And right now, represented here. It's 10.85. What's the 1 year expected move in the S&P 500 for this year as everything stands right now? 10.85 exactly. And what was the low? 9.97. That means at its lowest point, the expected move in the S&P 500 was only about 9.97% for the year. So those are great things. So we can see that there are about 3 or 4 times, a little bit here at the end of June, a little bit in September, a little bit in October, a little bit in November. This looks like right around the election. The expected move or volatility was greater than its average. Remember, this average is this blue line, right? Was greater than its average. And you can see how quickly it comes back down to the average every single time when at least compared to when volatility is below its average. So we see it takes weeks, months to get above average, and then it comes right down. Then weeks, months to get back to reality, and then once it's above average, it comes back down. Same thing, same thing, same thing, up, quickly down, and then staying down for a long time. So again, it takes about 4 times as long for volatility or the expected move to come up to its average than it does the other way around. So that's just visualizing what we're going to do here. So what we did was we did another study now this time. So same data set. So 1990 to present, 6,500 plus occurrences in SPY. Again, 6,500 plus occurrences is a large enough sample size where the numbers will play out accurately, and there's nothing baked in here, nothing curve fitted for that many occurrences. Again, it's over 27 years of data. So what we did was every single day we sold one 16 delta call, we sold one 16 delta put, and again, don't worry about it, but that's called a strangle for future reference. And all it is just placing a bet on the expected move being greater than the actual move. And we did it in the monthly expiration cycle closest to 50 days. So again, why did we do this? Well, the first reason we did it was because SPY is the most liquid product in the world, and the data is publicly available. Selling a 16 delta call and a 16 delta put gives us a 68% chance of making money. A trade that has a 68% chance of making money, for the most part, when done this way, is just a bet again on the expected move being greater than the actual move, right? So we want the price to fall within our 16 delta call strike and our 16 delta put strike. That is just representative of the expected move, nothing crazy. And then what we did, remember, then what we did was, because people wanted to know if there were better times than others to actually execute this strategy. So what we did was we bracketed into 3 categories. So the first category was all occurrences, right? So all 6,500 plus occurrences, right? And then we bracketed to when the expected move was less than average. And again, about 70-ish% of the time, volatility of the expected move is below average. And we call that just low volatility for conversation sakes. And then about 20-ish% of the time, we bracketed the next round of occurrences where the expected move is greater than average, right? And we call it high volatility. So again, all occurrences, if it was just this time frame that we were looking at, all occurrences would be every single one of these days. Low volatility would be all the ones where the price of the VIX is below the blue line, excuse me. And high volatility would be, as an example, all the occurrences here where SPY is above the blue line. So again, we're just looking to see, number one, is there a better time than not to sell, to place a bet that the expected move is greater than the actual move, right? So that's all we're looking to do here, guys. And remember, hold on, like, don't get crazy. But again, I just want to go through it again. What we did was 27 years. So what we did was 27 years. We got the average of the VIX over the 27 years. We did 3 things. We did this every single day, and we called that all volatility, right? So no matter what was happening, we did that. And you already saw those results. Again, that was right 81% of the time. And then we did all the times where the VIX was below, this average. We bracketed it in one category. And then we did all the times when it was above the average. So here are the results. So let's start from the left, guys, because it's really, really important. Again, if we sell a 16 delta call and a 16 delta put, we expect to be right 68.2% of the time to make no money, because again, conventional wisdom says the stock market is a zero-sum game. One guy makes money, one guy loses money, one lady loses money, the other one makes money, right? So that is conventional wisdom of the stock market. But what we showed is, because we believe that options are overpriced because they are priced off the expected move, and they actually are settled to the actual move, that we could be right 81% of the time, and instead of making no money, quote unquote, zero sum game, we made about $41 a trade. And then what we did was we said, okay, let's take all the times when volatility is kind of below its average. We just call that low volatility. And remember, it takes about 4 times as long for low volatility to become normal volatility, right? And we were right a little less than 81%, about 78% of the time, and we made a little bit less than $41. We made about $38 a trade. Still a quite profitable endeavor, no question about it. However, the big boy is in the right-hand column, which is a really, really exciting one. So again, the right-hand column is anything above this average line, or in this case, the blue line. That was only about 20% of the time. Remember, it takes it's 4 times faster for volatility to revert to the mean than when it's above average. So we were right 88% of the time for an average profit of $84.50 per trade. Now that is some serious shit, my friends. That's some serious shit. Again, conventional wisdom says you'll be right 68.2% of the time for no money. If you do it all the time, you're right 81% of the time for $41. And then if you do it when the expected move is greater than average, which means that options are higher priced than average, you're right 88% of the time for about $85 a trade. That is absolutely amazing. Remember, we just took a trade that was supposed to be right 68.2% of the time and make us no money. First, we turned it into a trade that was profitable 81% of the time for $41. And now, just picking our spots, we're right 88% of the time for about $84.50 a trade. Now that is where the edge is, guys. It's not a zero-sum game. This is where the edge is. So a lot of you are probably saying, well, why does this happen? Well, let's think about it right here. When we have, remember, options are priced off of 2 things. Number 1, they're distance away from the current price of the stock, which is always static. Number 2, the expected move. So if an option is down here at, let's say, 14, if an option is $2, well, once it gets up here and here and here, it's going to be more and more valuable. But quickly, as the expected move contracts, and as volatility contracts, the value of that option is going to lose option. If we sell options, we are hoping that the value of those options go down so we can buy them back cheaper. Same thing here. All of a sudden, options get more expensive and then they quickly become less expensive. And we make money on this and the expected move contracts. So that's why it's so amazing. That's why selling options when the expected move is greater than average is such a profitable endeavor, because it's only up there for a short amount of time. So those option prices only get inflated for a short amount of time. This is how you turn something where you're supposed to be right 68.2% of the time to 88% of the time. This is how you turn something where you're supposed to be right 0% of the time and you're right for $0 and you're right 84.5%. Now a lot of you are probably saying, oh my God, Steven, that's like the most amazing thing. How do I do this? We're not done yet. We can do even better, and I will show you on the next video.